Are you tired of nagging, pleading, and begging others to change? You know what they need to do, but forcing them to do it is not the right answer. Inspiring them to do it is.
So today we're going to talk about how to unlock the code to create positive change in others' lives. So let's face it, change is hard. Change is inevitable in our lives, but it's hard. And studies show that change is really difficult in all organizations. Most people don't like to change. 70% of large-scale change efforts in companies don't work. Why is it?
That's a lot. 70%?
It's a lot. And I think for people, getting out of the comfort zone is the hardest part. Fear of change, not knowing what to expect in change, losing control potentially because they're not sure what's going on. So it's really hard to have change. However, as we said, it's inevitable. So how can we inspire others in our lives to change effectively? So let's talk about some ways that we can do that.
Right. Well, the first one was we can lead by example. So something that comes to mind is we have to change our computers, adjust, get a new computer, and maybe use new apps or software. And there's always pushback. So I already know Windows. I already know Excel. Well, I don't want to use Google Docs. What's this new app out here? And they're comfortable in that. And so by leading by example is you just use it. You use it every day. You send them a link saying, here, could you check out my document? Could you help here? And that's a simple way of doing it.
Right. That's a hard one for me.
That's why I thought of it.
When it comes to computer changes, I can be a little set in my ways that way. So I think you brought up that example on purpose.
Well, DOS has gone away a long time ago.
Oh, goodness. People adopt behaviors, though, when you see leading by example. I mean, one of them that we see a lot in organizations is that the boss will maybe take time off from work, but they will continue to check their emails. They'll continue to plug in every time while they're gone. But yet then they're surprised when their employees, they want their team members to be able to take time off, and they're not disconnecting, and they're wondering why. Well, it's because the leader of the organization is not doing it.
Right.
So you have to set the example. If you're constantly answering emails on the weekends and in the evenings, and you've set that precedence, then your team thinks that they need to do it too. And I mean, that's really important. We all know the importance of rest and recovery. So if we're not doing that as a leader of the organization, then we're probably developing a culture in our organizations where we're working 24/7. And that's certainly something that we need to be change agents for, and we need to lead by example.
Right. That's good.
Another one you had talked about recently is exercise. And that's something that if you want to create a healthy work environment, we talked about it. We had a podcast about that, is doing things with your team. This can be something at home as well.
We just did that yesterday. We had our meeting and we covered things we had to cover on the computer, on the big screen.
Right.
And the rest of the meeting was on the walk. I don't know if notes were taken, but we got it done.
Yes, there were actually. There were notes taken, and it makes all of the difference because we're promoting then that healthy behavior. So I think when we're talking about the leading by example and what you want things to be, it brings to mind this is your company culture. So when we're talking about this in a team environment, in your company environment, your culture is what you're creating through your behaviors. So if you want your team behaving in a certain way in how they interact with each other and how they interact with your clients, then that needs to be named, so then you can lead that by example. So it comes to developing those core values that you have as a company, and then deciding what those are, and then being able to lead by example in those core values.
I think you just hit on something that we don't talk about a lot, but the values and the mission statement, and you have to lead by example with those. You want everybody's buy-in, you want people to help create those, but you have two new team members, and then when they come on board, or people that have been there for a while, you get a little complacent. And leading by example is really important when it comes to that culture piece.
Right. Great job making it this far and being committed to your personal and professional growth. Now, we want to make sure that you're able to take the lessons from this episode and apply them to your leadership and life. So we've created absolutely free a downloadable worksheet that you can download right now, and it's going to show you the top lessons of today's episode and, more importantly, help you create an action plan so you can take these principles and put them in process in your life right away. So go ahead and get this resource and let's get back to it. Exactly. So knowing what those values are for your company, have you named them? And does everybody else know what those are? And it may not be as important when you are, obviously a solo entrepreneur, or you have a very small team because you're working very closely together every day. But the bigger that your company gets, the harder that it is. I know when my facilities management company, we got to 50 team members, and then we got to 150 team members, and I was at a place where I couldn't possibly touch every single person anymore. So although we had developed core values, what we wanted the company to be from the very beginning, its earliest stages, as the company continued to grow, you get further and further away from being able to really touch your team members every single day. So that's why it's so important. So knowing what those values are, you're leading as the CEO, executive of the company, you're leading by example. And then the people that report to you, if they have people reporting to them, then it just becomes this domino effect that you spread the culture through the company by leading by example. So we would ask you, what are you doing to inspire change? So if there's something that you've been frustrated with in your company, what are you doing in that regard to inspire change? And an example just came to mind is follow through. We have that as one of our core values, is do what you say you're going to do. And we want, if our team members have projects that they're working on and they say, I'm going to have this part of the project completed by the end of this week, then we expect that that's going to be completed by the end of the week. That's actually our core value. So
Even me?
we had a conversation the other day where you had made a promise to a team member where you hadn't followed through, and we were having kind of a catch-up conversation, and I had said, oh, did you follow through on this? And you hadn't. So just an example, and I do that too, where you make a promise on something and then something else comes up and inevitably you forget. And those things can happen. It just can't be on a regular basis. So, but I think it's really important. As the leader of the organization, we carry a heavier responsibility to lead by example.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the second one we need to talk about is listening and taking notes, and active listening, I guess, would be a better way of putting it.
That's good. That's good.
One of the first things that comes to mind is just my favorite active listener, my favorite poet. I doubt she would even call herself a poet, but she is amazing, is Sam Horn.
Yeah, she's great.
She's brilliant, and she's fun, and she has a way with words that is amazing.
And she's an excellent communicator.
But active listening for her, she has the triple E's. And so when you're talking with someone and you want to extract information, she has the triple E's. I want to learn about your experiences. Tell me about what those are. Tell me about your expertise. So I want to know what you're an expert in. And then from there, what's an epiphany? What is something that has changed or you have made change that's a positive way? So experience, expertise, and epiphany. And she uses that as a way of having active listening. And she uses a pen and paper.
Okay.
She always has a pen and paper to write down the notes.
That's great.
So that's how she is always doing active listening.
That's great. We have a client that we're working with who was struggling, had some frustrations of just team members not working effectively together. And what was really wise about this leader is he said, there must be something that I am doing because it feels like I'm not communicating effectively. And I feel like sometimes my team members are upset or frustrated. And what do I need to do? So he was looking in the mirror at himself, which was really great. And I said to him, well, how often, we talked about how many direct reports that he had, and he had quite a few. And I said, well, what kind of meetings are you doing? How often are you meeting? He said, oh, well, we're having a weekly team meeting. I said, okay. And how often are you meeting one-on-one with your direct reports? And he said, well, I'm really not doing that at all unless, they come to me with a problem or something like that. And I let him know that this was a game changer in my leadership and in really having better communication with my team members. Is I set what we've called one-to-ones for years, and on a weekly basis, and you can set up what works for you, but on a weekly basis, I said to him, try this. Set up a one-to-one where you have an agenda and you let this direct report of yours actually put things on the agenda. What is it that they want to talk about with you on this weekly basis? And the one-to-one, the main purpose is to be able to sit with them face to face and have a conversation where you're getting to know them, you're checking in with them, you're seeing how things are going, and you're actively listening to the things that they want to talk about. And so he said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And I said, I think part of the problem is we don't provide enough face time anymore with our team members. And it makes such a difference because it builds trust and rapport when you make that time. So guess what? We started doing this, and just a month went by, 30 days went by, and then we met together for a coaching catch up. And he said to me, Janelle, it's really working. He said, it's making such a difference. And then when we get together for our team meetings, they are just so much more productive, and they actually are going really well. Everybody's really participating and wants to be there as part of the team meeting. So it was a really good change.
Yeah, that's a great.
Just taking that time to listen.
And that goes into the other one is, as a leader, you want people to change or do something. Share stories about your changes or stories about others that have made changes that may tie in with what you want changed.
Good point.
So if you want better communication, as in with our client, then share the story and do that. If it's something if you want, I don't know, somebody to drive better, share a story about how you got in a car accident and you weren't paying attention because you were texting or you were talking on the phone or whatever it might be. Share a story and then say, and so I would suggest you don't do that while you drive.
Right.
Just
right.
come up with something about the change and make a story, make it not about them as a negative,
right,
but about you or someone else as a learning experience.
And remember, as the leader, is you have a lot of power that you may not realize that you have, even when you just walk into the room and you're with your team, because, you're writing the paycheck, right? You're signing that paycheck. And so that ultimately gives you some power if you're the leader. So it's important that you bring yourself to this human aspect, because they may look at you like you have it all together, and you don't, right? We don't have it all together. So when they admit to something that's not going well and they have the vulnerability to talk about that, which is awesome if you've created that environment, which is so important, that you share, hey, I get that. And this is what happened to me in a similar situation. And when you can share that, as well as, and this is what I did to change in my own life. Again, back to that leading by example, because you're there to share some of the wisdom that you have. And you know what? They're there to share some wisdom that they have too. It's a two-way street.
That's good. And that kind of ties in with the very next one. Imagine that is asking thought-provoking, provocative questions. So if you are going into that meeting talking about change and you have to bring it up, ask some questions. Say, why wouldn't this work? Or do you all have better ideas? Is there something? So open the dialogue, be willing to accept that, and then you can discuss how this change will impact them.
Right. And it's not reasonable to get everyone in your organization. If you have a big company and we had several hundred employees, we obviously can't gather everybody to say, we're thinking about making this change. How do you feel about it? But whenever you can, when you can involve your team, of course, your management team, your executive team, but when you can have company town hall meetings, we have several clients, and we used to do this too, would have really regular town hall meetings Our client, where one of the clients we're working with, has them on a monthly basis where he gathers his he has a large management team together of 40 people, and they have a town hall where they can ask any questions that they have. It's a great opportunity as leaders to ask questions, to talk about some issues, challenges and opportunities, and be able to talk about some things that you're thinking about changing, and getting people's input and asking those questions, because just the aspect of doing that helps people to feel included. And as you talk to most people, they don't need or probably even want to be the one making the decision. They just want to be a part of it and included in it. And you can get some really great ideas and maybe things you haven't thought if you take the time to ask the questions.
And if you're doing those town halls and you write down on a whiteboard or something, just keeping track that you're listening, that goes a long way too.
Right.
You may not take action on any of those items, but there may be something there that somebody out on the streets, out just day to day doing the work, they may have a great idea that could impact the entire company.
Right.
So being out there actively asking those questions and then asking for feedback is I think really impactful on the entire company.
And I think that leads into a tip that I think is a good one. And we talked about culture already at the beginning, but creating that culture of growth in your organization is one that then makes people more ready to change. Because if you're a growing company, you are constantly changing. And if you've created a culture where continuous improvement is what you do. I mean, we have a core value of continuous improvement, that we always want to be looking at how can we be improving this, how can we do this better. And when you have a culture like that, this culture of growth, you have created an environment where it's okay for people to fail. And that is, a lot of work environments don't have that. And people are really afraid to try anything new because they don't want to get in trouble.
I think that's the fear of, like you said it, you're so strong when you walk into a room, you ask a question, they're afraid of the repercussions of the answers, and then they're not sure if they want to answer. So you really have to create the entire culture around, it is okay to disagree with me.
Yes.
It is okay to come up with something that is entirely different than my opinion, and I want you to share it.
Right. And in fact, I hired you because of your talents, your skills, and your expertise, which complement mine, which are different than mine. And I want to hear your feedback. It's important to me.
That's good. Yeah, I agree. How can we encourage others to want to be part of the change is the next thing, and so encouraging those, not discouraging, not like I mentioned in the beginning, we're going to come out there with guns a-blazing and we're going to manipulate you, push you, argue with you, but how can we encourage you, inspire you to make change?
Right.
And I think one of the ways that we can do that is just being positive around these people. These people, team members, partners, whatever it might be, but encouraging them, being positive about any little thing that they might do. Maybe they went for a walk. Encourage that. Or, hey, let's go for a walk together. And that might encourage the activity.
Right.
Or, so how can, just making sure you're a positive influence.
That's good. I think if you're making a big change in the organization, another strategy is that once you've made the change, once you've decided to make the change, is really communicating clearly about the change, and a lot. Because that communication along the way really makes the difference. And we've certainly dealt with this. I'm sure that you've had this too as entrepreneurs working with a team, is sometimes you communicate something, you think you've done a beautiful job communicating it, and the other person doesn't understand at all what's going on. So very important to communicate in a way in which your team understands, as we talked about, giving the opportunity for people to ask questions, asking them questions, and then describing the benefits of the change. Just wrote a blog actually that's going out this week that talks about how most of the time, 70 to 80% of the time, we are in this negativity bias where our minds are looking for what's going to go wrong. And you want to create a culture. And when you're being change agents, you want to talk about, well, what are the things that are going to go right? What are the benefits? Not that you don't look at those things, because you obviously want to prepare yourself for the hurdles that you're going to have to overcome. But what are the benefits of the change? What is the win? Because typically you're not going to do change for change. And I guess that's another point we'll get back to, is that you want to, if you're initiating change, you're doing it for a purpose. And so don't just say, we are moving to this new software, or we are whatever the project may be, we're going to start this new project, without explaining what is the purpose of why you're doing this. What are the benefits that it's going to be to the company and to the individuals personally, so that they understand it. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that oftentimes that part's missed. I can think of one instance where a couple of the companies, one that we worked with in the past was working with another one that we know, and they were implementing this massive change. And because they had partnered on a few things, but did not clearly state why they were making the change, it was confrontational, to say the least. And, it unfortunately almost blew up, if not totally blew up, the relationship, which was a very strong relationship. And had they gone in and said, we need to do this, here's why, here's how we're going to do it. We know it's going to be tough at the beginning, but it should be easier once we get to this point.
Right.
Then I think that situation, that relationship, that partnership would have flourished instead of floundered.
Yep. Good point.
So I think that's another one. You said change for change's sake.
Yes, yeah. I think that's a good one. And it just kind of came out of this discussion, is that I think it is a real problem for leaders who are at the top of the organization, who are the founders. It's a founder syndrome thing. I will openly admit to it, where I love change. I find it exciting. You do too. And if you're familiar with the Colby, if you're a quick start, you're a 10, I'm an 8. We are full of ideas, excited about change. We like to start the next thing. We really love to do that. And I think people that, especially entrepreneurs who are change agents, who love change, who get excited about it, that sometimes we change too much and we don't know that purpose. So going back to what we said before, what is the purpose for the change? Don't change just for changing's sake. And I think that companies that are doing that, it's going to end up hurting themselves in the end. That there really needs to be a purpose for why you're making this change, because change is difficult. It takes everybody rallying together. So when you're going to be making, especially those big changes that you're going to make in your organization, make sure that you've got a really clear reason for what you're doing.
I think also don't change too many things all at once.
Oh, good one. Very good.
Simultaneously changing 16 different things doesn't work really well. That's probably why 70% fail, is that they're changing too many things at once.
That's
and they're
true.
Not focused on one or two things at a time. Maybe you can change something in operations and then in finance simultaneously.
Right.
Maybe they're so intertwined, you really should only focus on one of those at once, then get that completed and moving forward, and then start the other one.
Right, exactly. Another key tactic to helping people change is just offering encouragement and taking the time with people to be able to encourage them along the path. Because sometimes we just say something that we want to have them change. Sometimes we don't even say it to them. We're frustrated about something, but really don't have the conversation. So having the clear conversation about things that do need to change, and then being able to provide support and encouragement.
I think that's important. And committing to the change. I think if you have this conversation, you make some changes in your organization, and then you need to commit to it. Don't after 30 days go, oh, that didn't work. I mean, there are times you need to do that, but commit to the change, because you did it for a reason, hopefully.
Right.
And then you don't need to bail on it too soon. So make sure that we are going to do this for X period of time, unless it's a catastrophe.
Right.
So I think committing to change is also important.
Yes. And then finally, I think we need to address if you need behavior change in your organization or with a team member where some things just aren't working. You've had some courageous conversations, crucial conversations about things that you want to change, is that you need to have clear communication about that. So starting with when you bring a new person on the team, being really clear about what their role is, having a job description for that, and then having regular check-ins where you're talking about how are things going? What's going well? What isn't going well in your opinion? And then how can we improve this, and having a plan together to be able to make positive change. Because a lot of time it goes back to that communication piece. If you're not communicating up front what your expectations are, then it's hard for your team member to know what they're supposed to be doing. If you have communicated up front what the expectations are, and those expectations aren't being met, then having the conversations about that, creating a plan together that you both agree to, that you make sure that you both understand, and then having the expectations around that you will hold your team member accountable and welcome and encourage the open communication and conversations around it.
That's good.
Yeah.
So today we talked about how we can force others to change to be better and more like us, right? Threats, guilt, fear, ultimatums. Isn't that what we covered?
Yes, we did, but that really doesn't work. And I think we all understand that. So we talked about what are the key ways that you can be a person of higher influence in helping people be change masters.
Inspirational.
Through inspiration. That's the way to go. And we talked about how you can unlock that code to positive change in other people's lives. Remember, change is not about control, but about growth. And you don't want to force change, you want to inspire change. So we hope that these key principles can help you be more of an inspiration for those that you lead. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you'll be the first to know when new episodes drop to really help you grow in your leadership and level up your life and your mindset.
Watch one of these other videos, share with a friend, and don't forget, download the PDF from today's topic so that you can make sure to hold yourself accountable and take that action plan and use it.
Have a great day.